discussing today. First thing first, we'll be talking about what a CLI is. So essentially, we'll be giving the introduction on the CLI, which a little bit of intro I gave it in the last session as well. And then we'll be talking about GUI versus CLI, right? GUI you already know, right? What is that? Graphical user interface, correct? Third, we'll be talking about basic file management commands. So these commands will be talking both in our Mac, like what all commands do we have in our Mac and in our Windows. So we'll cover the both because these are mostly the two popular operating system, right? There must be some people who might be using your uh, Linux or Unix kind of a system, but again, most of these commands should work. Okay. And the last thing, we'll be sharing some essential list of commands. Okay. This is all what we are planning to cover in today's session. Okay. So first thing, sorry, 1 minute. Okay. So first thing first is CLI. Anyone has any idea about CLI? The IT people, command line interface. Why do we use that? Anurag, editor, VS Code. VS Code is good enough. I don't know whether you were there in the last session or not, but it's good. Turbo and all. Again, you are doing. Sorry, yeah. You are doing like full stack development here, right? We mostly will be using what? JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and for that, Visual Studio Code is a very good editor. Turbo C and C plus, that's basically used for your C and C plus plus, right? You will not be writing your Java code and other things there. Okay. Correct. So essentially, the idea of CLI is like it's basically a command line. What we give commands, command line interface. So what is an interface? An interface is something through which you interact. Correct. Interface is something through which you interact. So by using the command, we have to interact with what? With the operating system, right? With our computer, so to say. It's that simple. So in your late 90s, like late 60s, right, when your computer actually came in, so you didn't really have the concept of your mouse. So it was like just one machine, and then you have your keyboard, है ना? So most of the times, what you used to do, you used to type, right, and tell computer what to do. That's it. So that time you did not have an option of taking your mouse, taking your cursor, putting it to one place to another place, right click and all that things. All of those stuff wasn't there. Okay, even your operating system, right? So you must be knowing Windows is an operating system. Okay, so before Windows, we actually had MS DOS. We actually had MS DOS. And some of you guys, right? If you have bought a Windows laptop ever, right? For example, if you went to a shop and wanted to buy a laptop, so they must have asked you like whether you want Windows, in the sense you want the window to be installed there, or do you want a DOS? Did this ever happen to you? Right? So if you want a Windows, right, then what will happen? You will be getting a licensed window. Okay, so there is going to be a license for that window. So if the license is there, that means, for example, if your laptop is say 70,000 rupees. Okay, now what these guys will be telling you, right? These shopkeepers, they'll say the laptop cost is 70,000 rupees. If you need a window along with it, plus that means you will be needing a window license. Okay, that means say Windows 11 you are having, so that will cost you another 5,000. Okay, so your laptop cost comes up somewhere around 75,000. Okay, however, if you don't take this and you just take the laptop, which is this guy, right, this will come with the DOS in a way. Okay, so what people do, they take 70,000 wala, and on top of it they install Windows. Okay, so Windows 11 or something like that they install. Okay, and also with the Windows which you have something called, so essentially what happens, so your Windows is basically, you could say, it's kind of a GUI operating system, right, where you have a graphical user interface where you could interact with multiple things, right? For example, like how I'm doing, I can move my mouse and all that stuff I could do. However, in the late 60s, you did not have that option. So you just had one black screen. Okay, in that black screen, you had to write few things to interact with the computer. So for example, even if you want to copy one file from another folder, what you will be doing, you will say copy. You will actually write copy. You'll tell the path of the file from the target location, the source location, both the things you will be telling. You'll be actually writing all that stuff, and that command will get executed and your file will move, right? And you will not be seeing a file like a folder or something like that. It will all be a list, like how you have a normal list. Like for example, it will say abcd directory. It is a directory. Within that, you have something like that. So I'll be showing you all that stuff, but I hope you got an idea what a CLI is, at least. Correct. So if I can show you the CLI display, how a CLI looks like. So I had shown this thing earlier as well, but again, so in your Mac, what you can do, I'll just terminate this one. You just have to press command space. You will get this thing, spotlight search. Okay, terminal, search for terminal, enter. Okay, once you do that, you will get something like this. Okay, so this is your terminal and this is your command line interface, a CLI. It's a CLI interface for your Mac operating system. Okay. Similarly for your Windows, right? If I come to Windows, okay. So this is your Windows. In Windows, we have something called CM. It got a little hang हो गया लगता है. Wait. CMD. Either you type CMD, okay, other or you have an option. You can do window. There is a window key, right? Window R. If you do window R, it will open this run, right? And here also you can type CMD. If you type CMD and press OK, it will basically show you this screen. Can you see this screen? A big black screen which is coming in. It says C users Neeraj. So I am inside C. Now, what is the C users Neeraj and all? We'll be talking about it. But again, you essentially will get this screen. Okay, this is for Windows, and for Mac, you have something called terminal. So command prompt, we call it as a command prompt here. So we have something called command prompt. Wait a second. Okay, so we have something called command prompt that is for my Windows, right? And something called terminal, which is for my Mac. Okay. Similarly, you have for Ubuntu also. Like you have, like if you have any other flavor of Linux, there also you have a terminal. Okay, so that can be used. And the commands which I'll be using, those are also going to be the same. Okay, that's how it is. Now, the main difference between your CLI and your GUI, right? So we do know about CLI right now. So CLI is what? Again, we are repeating. It's command line interface. So Asharvi, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right. When it comes to command prompt and PowerShell, I'll tell you what is the difference. Okay. So obviously they are not same. If you just asking the main question, so they are not same. They are different. Okay. So that's the thing. Okay. So this is fine. So what I was telling you about, we have something called command line. So I hope everyone is clear till here that when the initial version of your operating systems were coming, your computers were coming, they all were CLI. That means you could interact to those computer only by using a black screen, and you had a keyboard. For everything you had to write. That is what. So you did not have an option to move around a mouse and do all that stuff. Okay. And that is where the second thing came into the picture, which is called GUI. Okay, which is your graphical user interface. Okay, that means now you have some sort of a graphics. Okay, so you had a graphics. That means now you have a mouse. Okay, now you could see things. For example, now you could see that if I take my cursor on the left, right, I could see there is a cross button. So even though it does not tell me to close, but I could think if I click on a cross button, it might close the screen or close this window, right? So these kind of options started coming. For example, if I take my cursor, put it here, I see some sort of a more information, right? So this is all part of your GUI. right? So that means the window, the computers which you guys are being using, right? Everyone, those all computers are basically GUI applications. So they have the GUI application. The GUI application is something which has a graphic user interface. When I say graphic user interface, user interface, that means user is interacting through a graphic thing, right? That is all what it means. That means now you don't like no longer have to give commands to do certain things, right? You could just use your mouse and click at multiple places and do stuff with that. Correct. That is what Nikhil. Yep. Uh, Whatever, like instead of using CSE, see again, CLI and GUI are both a way to interact with your computer. Okay, CLI is more descriptive, that means you have to type the commands, right? GUI is more appealing because you could see the things, right? A lot of things are there, you could actually interact with all that stuff, and that is how it is being done. Okay, so with your GUI application, obviously the interaction is a lot more easier. Okay, and you will see that. For example, I will show you the commands through which we'll be seeing certain things, and then you could see here through GUI it is very simple. Okay, that is the thing. Now if now if I need to tell you the differences between, see, one is a very big difference which I have told you, that in a CLI you are basically giving the commands. With GUI, what you are doing, you're basically using a user interface where you could click all that stuff you could do. Okay, that is one thing. Now, if you talk about other differences, first thing, obviously CLI is difficult to use because you have to write commands, correct, or you have to remember the commands, correct. Similarly, GUI is a lot more easier to be. It's easy to use, right? So you don't need to remember a command to copy. You do not need a command. You don't need to remember a command to delete. All that stuff. You just right click. You have 10 options. Out of 10 options, you see, okay, delete is one. Obviously, it will do delete, right? That is what you do. That's one thing. Another thing is your CLI. See, whenever this computer is running, for example, right now, even the screen which is coming in front of me, or even if it's a CLI, obviously it is consuming some memory, right? You know this concept of you have RAM and all that thing in your computer, correct? You must know that. So obviously, if CLI is there, it will be consuming a less memory, right? It because there is no GUI or nothing is there. It's just a plain black screen which you are currently working at. So a CLI application takes a less amount of memory compute compared to your GUI application. Got it? Anyone has any doubt on this part? Okay, so Nikhil is saying how GUI, like how CLI is faster than GUI. So essentially, what is happening now, Nikhil? GUI is basically just a way. Okay, let me think of an example to. Huh. Consider it's just a vague example. Okay, don't take it literally, but just get an idea for it. For example, if you go to a shop, you yourself go to a market and buy something. Okay, that is one thing you could do, or you can order something. Okay, so if you order something, that thing will take some time. Okay, but it is a much more easier for you. You could just simply order it and it will be at your home, right? But again, when you're ordering it, what is happening? Those people are also essentially going to the same shop, most likely the same, they'll go to the same shop and bring the item, correct? Something similar happens here as well. Even though you have a GUI through which you interact, but that GUI also internally, it basically makes the same calls to get the data and all do that stuff. So instead of you writing the code for it, the GUI people have written the code. So for example, when you're doing a click, so based on that click, what is happening, the same amount of code is actually being executed, which otherwise you had to write in the CLI. So what these people are doing, they are doing a sort of a delegation. So instead of you writing that entire code, they have written that code. Okay, and when you are performing any action, for example, when you're clicking on a GUI application, right, it is getting executed. Getting the idea? That is why your CLI is faster. If the CLI is faster, why? Because then you don't need to do that all that stuff, right? Then if on a click, the code which is being, so first there is a click code which you have, then you have a other code which is doing the actual stuff. So if you're directly using CLI, that means then you don't need to do this transition which is happening. I hope you got it. Clear, everyone? Nikhil is saying no. So Nikhil, is it not Clear? Is it still not clear? The difference, why the GUI is slow and CLI is faster? Yes, but okay, tell me what is the question? Some issue. Acha, see, the idea is, for example, see what I'm trying to tell you, the underlying thing. See, the underlying, see, there is a lot of other concepts which you have in operating system. I don't want to get into it because that will complicate the things. Piyush, I'm in. See again. So Piyush, if you are putting a question and I'm not answering it, that means I'll answer that thing at some point of time, right? Because there is no. Now you are asking me. एक फ्लो होता है ना, उसको ब्रेक नहीं करना चाहिए. Just I'm just trying to tell you that I have seen your question. Obviously you have put it on the question and answer section also, and I'll answer those things, but first I need to clear some other things, right? First, but sir, in CLI it take time to write long code. This vision is also right. See what I'm trying to tell you, right? For example, essentially what is happening, for example, even if you are doing a click, consider you have the screen and you are doing a click here, you are saying copy from this place to another place, okay? Now what is happening, a GUI application, what it will do, it will translate that thing, okay, and internally it will also fire a query by using CLI. It will use CLI to make those queries, okay? It's just that you did not have to write that code, okay? So what is happening here, you are doing some extra work in your computer, some extra work is happening, that means a GUI application is there, first thing, okay? That is taking the input, and that input it is transitioning into some a CLI command, and then it is executing that, right? So it can take time. If you directly write that code directly into the CLI, then it will be faster, because then this thing you are not doing it, right? This part you are not doing it, correct? So that's why you can see your CLI is faster than your GUI application. Okay. The other thing, in your GUI application, a lot of other stuff is happening. For example, you are just seeing a screen, but how that screen coming into the picture? So there is a lot of process. So there is a process which is running in your computer. Okay. In your process, you have there is a this is a advanced concept, this thread and all. Don't want to get into it right now, but you have a process which is running, basically the GUI application which you are seeing, it's basically a process which is running in your computer. Now what is a process? So something like this, you could I could say maybe in your like Windows computer, you must have seen this thing. If I right click and show you this uh, task, so you see this, right? So there are a lot of processes which are currently running in your system. See, these are all processes which are running in your system, right? So you must be having one application which is basically running for this thing as well, right? So an extra process is running in your computer, okay, just to run your transition while you are interacting with the your GUI application, and that is transitioning it to a CLI command and all that stuff, right? So that is why we can say the commands line interface is faster than your GUI application. Okay, Nikhil, did I answer your question? Can we say that CLI use a text as a command and GUI use text, image, icon, animation, and other interfaces that correct. Exactly, Ashwari. That is what the reason is, right? Because if you see the, for example, consider the same thing which I gave example of DOS. So you have DOS, you are opening the laptop and you have a black screen and do whatever you want to do with that thing, right? You have to write the command and everything. And on the other hand, you have a computer which is like a Windows system. In your Windows, you have basically all that stuff. Let me just open a Windows here. So you have all that stuff, which is, say you have a taskbar, you have this, you have these icons, you have all that stuff. So obviously this is, there is some amount of process like memory and all that thing your computer is taking, right, to render this. And on the other hand, if your computer just have to render this black screen, obviously it will take a less amount of memory, and the processing unit, your CPU will be less, the utilization of your CPU will be a lot lesser. But compared to this, it is as simple as that. For example, I'll just give you one super simple example. In your YouTube, if you see a video in 144 pixel, it will take less data, right? If you watch the same video in 1080 pixel, it will take more data. Simple enough. So similar things, if you are rendering a UI like a CLI like this, which doesn't have any sort of a UI or anything like that, obviously your computer will not be having more memory. It does not need a lot of memory. It does not need a lot of things for that, right? However, if you're running a heavy GUI application, it will take more memory, it will take more RAM, it will take more CPU. I hope it is clear now. And that is why we say CLI is faster than your GUI application. uh, Sandeep is saying, for example, let's assume RAM as human. CLI is like writing something on paper with pen, which is simple for human. Enjoy is like decorating the paper with color. Could be, huh? In a way, Sandeep. But again, the example is all right, but this example is not appropriate, I will say. Like in terms of when somebody asks you this question, right? What is the difference between a CLI and a GUI application? Your example is right for a basic, like if I have to explain this thing to you, right? So your example is right. There is no problem with your example which you have given. But when you will be explaining it to your interviewer, right? It has to be a little more professional, right? Simple thing, a CLI is something which directly takes your command and execute it, right? And your GUI application is something which has a graphical interface associated with it, and we interact with the graphical user interface, and then it basically transition those things into a command line things. Make sense? Point sahi hai, Sandeep. The thing what you have said is right, but again, we have to put it in a different way. Got it? Okay, so I hope everyone got the idea of CLI and GUI. There is no one who has a doubt in the CLI and the GUI. Okay. Now, if I could just simply show you, and one more other things. Okay, Nikhil, no sir. So your Nikhil, still you have a doubt? No sir, in the sense, no, no. Acha, ठीक है, ठीक है. Okay, cool, cool. ठीक है. Okay. Now other thing which I was telling again, in CLI you are taking input directly only through the command. In from GUI you are taking input from the multiple places. You can take in, say for GUI I could, I'm see right now I'm using one pen through which I write on my screen, right? So this is one pen. So it is happening through a GUI application because I have a screen I could write on it, right? And I have a mouse I could use it, right? So I have basically multiple ways of giving input to my computer when I'm using a GUI application. When I'm using a command line interface, that means a CLI, the only way to give input to it is type keyboard. Okay, cool. I hope it is clear now. Okay. Now so this is something I have already told you, that to open the Mac. Acha, one more thing I can see. I'm just thinking whether I should be showing you both Mac and Windows, or should I just show you only the Windows. दोनों दिखा देते हैं. Okay, we'll show both of the things, just in case if somebody has a Mac or somebody else has uh, this other thing. Okay. So everyone knows, like, acha, before one more thing, if I close this one more option I would like to tell you. So I told you about through Spotlight you do this, and you have an option of Spotlight, and here you could write terminal. If you don't want to do that, there is another option where you could basically click on it. Okay, sorry, I have to bring my this guy here. You click on your application. So you see here Launchpad is here. You click on the Launchpad. In the Launchpad you have something called utilities. If you see somewhere, see, where is utilities? Mm. One second. One minute. See that. Or maybe I think it is within this. Oh, it is within other. They have moved now in the latest one. Yeah. In others, you have to go. If you see here, other. In the other, you have this terminal. Click on it. That's your terminal. Okay. And like Windows, I have, like, we have Task Manager, right? I mean, just to tell you this thing, in Windows you have Task Manager. In Mac you have something called an Activity Monitor. So Activity Monitor is something which will tell you the application or the process which are running in your computer, right? For example, it is telling me that Google Chrome is there and it is taking 334 MB of memory, and then it has 45 threads. Again, thread is a very advanced concept for you right now. We'll not be getting into it, but it tells you Google Chrome and who is the user. It is telling Neeraj Sharma is the user who is using it. Okay, so this is what you get in your Mac, and in Windows you have Task Manager. Just to tell you the difference. Okay, so again, in Windows, if I go back, let's just recap what we had discussed earlier. So if I go into Windows, if I come up here, the thing I could do is I could click on it, come here, type CMD, which is my command prompt, and open it from here. Or I could do Window R and I could write CMD and do enter, and I should be able to see that. Okay, so a pool of windows. I did not get your question, Ashwari. Ashwari, sorry, Ashwari. Sir, a pool of Windows and Linux user. Linux, I do not have. I mean, if your question is that to show it in Linux, Linux, I do not have. Okay, fine. Now the thing is, you must see one thing that here, if I there is this icon, like not an icon, but there is this sort of a bar which is there, right? Acha, acha, she's asking for a poll. Acha, acha. So, okay. Let it be. I'll cover both the things. Don't worry about it. I'll cover both the things. Sometimes it becomes difficult, right? Because I lose the context what they are talking about. Sir, a poll for Windows. So I thought कुछ pool वगैरह मैंने कहा कुछ must be something new. Okay, it's he. Okay, Ashwari. Am I pronouncing your name right, Ashwari? She and he. Okay, I'll see that thing. But huh. Uh, Ashwar. Ashwar. Ashwar is right. अच्छा ठीक है perfect. Thank you. Thanks for correcting me, Ashwar. Okay, so what I was saying, fine, we'll cover both the things, Ashwar. So ज़रूरत नहीं है. So what I was saying, you see here, right? It is giving me this sort of an bar is there, which is essentially telling me that I have to type. Okay, so I could essentially type here. So if I'm typing here, the icon is basically moving forward, 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 forward. Okay, बताओ. Everyone is laughing on that, huh? Arey, it's easy, man. I could because the name because how do I know that Y is silent? Huh? From the name of it, it will look like कि हाँ she must be a girl, but obviously he's he. तो फिर ठीक है. But it's good. थोड़ा बहुत मजाक चलता रहता है. अच्छा, cool. Okay, something similar is happening in your terminal as well. You see here in terminal you have a different sort of a thing here, right? So now if you type this, again same thing is happening. A bar is actually moving, so it's basically, so whatever the new text you are writing, it is always coming on the top, on from the right, like the usual way. Nothing different is happening. Okay, now the first command, let's try to write the command. So now what is happening is, this is a place where I have to write the code. This is a place, not the code, sorry, this is a place where I have to write a command. Okay, and a command cannot be anything. A command cannot be anything. For example, if I could give you a very vague example, very super simple example. So you know you have your pet, your dogs are there, right? Dogs, cat, or whatever. So if you tell them sit, 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 so they get to know, okay, on if somebody tell me to sit, then I have to sit. Okay, after a while they understand it, right? That's a command which is they are getting it. If you instead of calling them sit, if you say badja, so maybe they will not understand, right? Because they are programmed in such a way that they will understand if you say sit, then only they will sit, right? Similarly the commands, right? So there are already predefined command. That means it's not that I could just simply come here and type anything and I do something like that. No. So what it says, command not found. So if you're writing something which your CLI does not understand, in that case you will be getting an error saying that command not found in your where, in your terminal. If we try to do the similar thing in our Windows, so again, when I'm in this screen, I'm in Windows. Okay, when I'm using this screen, this is my Mac. Okay, I hope nobody is confused here. Okay, so essentially when I'm writing anything here, okay, so obviously this thing does not make any sense, right? If I'm writing this and I'm doing enter, so what does it say? It says this is not recognized as an internal or external command. Okay, when I did the same thing in my Mac, so this is my Mac screen, it says what, command not found. So that means you can't simply write anything. Okay, so again, so that means when the CLI comes, you have to remember the commands. Okay, and that is one of the problem with the CLI, and that is why CLI is difficult, because you have to remember the command to execute the command. Okay, now let's write our first command, which I know is correct. Okay, that says who am I. So that's a command which says who am I. So if I do that and I enter, it tells me that I am Neeraj Sharma. So what it is telling me then? So what is who am I is doing? So when I'm writing who am I to the CLI, What is the output I'm getting is the Neeraj Sharma. That means it is telling me who is the user logged in right now. Correct? So the CLI actually knows who is the user, right? Same thing if I do in my Windows, even in my Windows, I have the same command, that is who am I. And if I do enter, it says I have a personal Windows. Within that, I have an account called Neeraj. Okay, so there is a computer which is personal Windows. Okay, that's the main computer. Within that, there is a user which is Neeraj, which is me. Okay, so who am I is a command. So command is not proper. Acha, it's not visible, is it? Is this one fine? For terminal, maybe not. Huh, Mac it's all right. I guess. I mean, Mac. Let me Mac. Actually, I don't usually use much of the terminal. There must be a way to do this, but it is like still the text is quite small. So ये नहीं चलेगा. This will not work for us. Let me see if I could. View. So bigger I could make it. How much bigger should I make this guy? This much is fine. Is this all right? Should be good now. Hmm? Yes? Okay, cool. So what I was telling, who am I? Enter Neeraj Sharma, that is the account. That's the current user who is logged in, right? In this computer, who is the current user? Neeraj. But see, there is a little difference here. When I'm using the same command in my, let's put it next to next. Both commands are doing kind of a similar thing. Both are giving me the current user who is logged in. But in my Windows, I'm also getting the computer name, which is my personal Windows. Within that, I have a user called Neeraj. Okay. And here I'm getting just Neeraj Sharma. Cool. So one command, who am I, to start with, which shows a way to us that with our we can actually interact with our computer through using CLI. Okay, fine. There are few questions in the question answer section. Let me just check that thing. Uh, Piyush, can you put your question again into the in the question answer section? I will answer it again. I will answer it later point of time, but I just want that question to be there so that I don't forget about it. Just put that question again in the chat, which you were not in the chat, in the question answer section where you were asking how the CLI will be used in our project. Uh, and does CLI UI has any use now when we have VS Code? Yes, Harsh. So obviously, see one thing, GUI again, your VS Code is again a GUI application. Okay, and in GUI application, in your VS Code, we can open the CLI. Okay, and how do we use CLI and all? We'll be using a CLI a lot. Okay, we'll be using a CLI a lot. But again, the commands will be very limited. But again, we will be using CLI. Yep. So Anurag, now I'm coming into it, right? So we'll be talking about the commands which we have in the CLI. Uh, Ashish is saying, sir, repeat in summarized way. What do you want me to repeat, Ashish? And again, shouldn't be putting this thing into the question answer section. That is something you should be putting in the chat. Can you put it on the chat? What you want me to repeat? If I'm giving space between who am I, it is not working. Exactly, Rahul. It will not work again because that is not a command. If you say who am I, that won't work. Okay, in this particular, okay, if Mac maybe it is working, but I guess here it will not. So here it is not working. Okay, so in your Mac also you have this thing which is allowing this thing. So break a command. So when you have spaces in between, that will be treated as a different command. Okay, in your Mac, if you see when I said just who am I just got the username. Here when I said who am I got a time and other things as well, right? So whenever you are writing any command, be like make sure that you do not have any spaces or anything in between. If a command requires a space, then it is all right. Okay, if it does not, then you shouldn't be putting it there. So why are we reading? Mohit is asking why we are reading CLI. What is the use of it? Because CLI, a lot of places, what happens, right? Why do we use CLI? Okay, in in a day-to-day work, for example, somebody like, for example, some of you people are from BBA, some of the people are from MBA. For you guys, it is a lot more easier to use a GUI application. Just click on multiple places and do all that stuff. Okay, that is much more convenient for you. But for a developer, many times what happens, right? You write a code, okay, and you put it into some sort of a file, okay, and now if you need to execute that file, okay, you yourself will find out, like, you'll feel that it is much more easier to run that application from the CLI rather than running it from the GUI application. So a normal user, like you are today, for example, who does not know much about programming, for you it may feel like that UI application is a lot more simple. In a way it is. However, when you get into the development, okay, there are many times where you will find out that a CLI running the application through the CLIs are a lot more convenient for a developer. Okay, that is why you need to learn the command line. Again, will, for example, creating a folder and all that things, do you need to use CLI for that? No, right? However, when we'll be writing code for React, correct, so when we'll be writing code for React and when we'll be using Node.js and all that stuff, it is a lot more easier to run it through the node, through the CLI, rather than using the GUI application. In fact, you don't even have a GUI application for certain things, you just have the CLI. Okay, you just have the CLI, you have to write it in the CLI, so that is why you need to know it. Okay, so so basically what your how things have progressed, you have to understand. So what compute, like what the companies did, right? The things which should be easy for everyone to use, they kind of become a lot more GUI thing, right? You have your web browser, you have your lot of application, MS Word and all that stuff. However, a programmer is somebody who will be writing a lot of code, right? He will be actually writing a lot of command. So a lot of applications are built around the CLIs. Okay, a lot of development applications where you will be, like, for example, in React, in Node.js, in Angular, a lot of places you will be using a lot of CLI. Okay, however, for somebody who is a normal normal person who doesn't code, for them it makes a lot more sense to do the GUI thing. And with this one we have some darkness. Light chali gayi thi. Okay, so I just opened the inverter one. Okay, whatever code we write in VS Code is in the form of CLI. No, 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 no. The code which you're writing, Ashwar, there, that is not a CLI. Okay, the code which you are writing, that is all GUI thing. No, no, no. Go live is not GUI. No, go live is not GUI. Go live is basically is an extension which we were using, which can let us open the HTML file in the browser. Again, we will talk about the go live when we'll be writing the HTML code. Okay, but the interface and everything, when you say something like an interface where you could click and do all that kind of a stuff, that's something you can consider as a GUI application. Okay, and here when I'm talking about CLI and GUI, here essentially I'm talking in terms of the application, like the old school applications which we had, like how your computer started and all that stuff. Okay. Why we are reading? So I hope, Mohit, I have answered your question that why we are reading CLI. So there is a use for CLI. Adish has asked, in the case in GUI we can copy a file or anything, but can we do in CLI by just giving command? If yes, okay. Huh, again, we will be doing that, Adish. We can do that from the CLI. How we will use CLI. So right now I'm just telling you about what all things you can do with the CLI. Okay, if you guys remember in the last session when I was telling you about this thing, when I was telling you about debugging, right? At that time, what I did, I write something like in there was one CLI in the VS Code. If you remember, I had opened a terminal. You remember? I had opened a terminal. In the terminal, I wrote a command, node, and then I wrote the file name and I did enter. So what that did, that executed that file, right? And I got an output. So you could use CLI to actually execute the programs and other stuff. Correct? So that is one of the other use that you will be using the CLI for. Correct? That is one thing. Okay, now let's talk about other thing. Now, for example, it says like C user this thing. Now, what if I would like to know where I'm currently at, in the sense, which is the current directory I am in? Okay, for that, what do we do in here? In our Mac, we write a command called pwd. That means print working directory. So obviously this terminal is there, right? This terminal must be running. So where I am right now, so for example, if I would like to create a folder, if I would like to delete a folder, so I should be in that location from where I want to do it, right? So where currently I am, right? Where exactly I am right now, that is something I get to know from pwd, which is print working directory in my Mac. In my Mac. Okay. If I do pwd and enter, see it is telling me that you are currently inside users. So there is a folder called users. Within that, there is a folder called Neeraj Sharma. Within that, you are currently. Okay. So you are currently at that location. Okay. If I have to do the similar thing in my Windows, this is my Windows, that is my command prompt. If I want to do the same thing in the command prompt, I will be doing what? CD. Okay, CD means change directory. Okay, and enter, and I get to know where I'm exactly. So I'm inside C. So there must be a folder called C. Within that, there is a folder called users. Within that folder, there is something called Neeraj, and that is where I am currently. That means that is where I am running all these commands. Everyone clear? Can you guys tell me what is PWD? PWD. Can you put it on the chat? PWD is print. No, Mukesh, it will not work. PWD will see again. I told right. The commands are different. Some commands are different in your Windows, and some command are different in your Mac. So that is why I'm showing both the ones. Print working directory, correct? In your CD, CD is what? Change directory. Okay. Anyone has any doubt? Okay. Now, many times what may happen that you know a command. Okay, so for example, a command can do multiple things. Okay, so what happens, right? So you have a command, or maybe say you got to know about a command, but you do not know what it does. So you do not know much about a command, but you know this is one command, but I don't know much about it. So how do I get more information about that command, that what it is, what kind of a thing it does, and all that stuff, right? So for that, we use something called, in Windows we use something called slash question mark. Slash question mark tells me more information about a certain command. For example, I have a command called cd. I have a cd command. Now I would like to know more information about this cd command, like what it is, what it does, and all that stuff. Say suppose you do not know about it, so you can do slash question mark, and you do enter. Now what it does, it will tell you all the information about it. See, it is telling is, now it is giving you the entire theory about it, like specifies that you want to change to the parent. See, if you use dot, it is telling you that if you use dot dot, then it specifies that you want to change the parent directory. Type cd drive to display the current directory in the specified drive. Use slash d switch to change the current drive in addition to change the so essentially you are getting a lot more information about that command. Okay, so there could, so why did I tell you this thing? Because many times what happens, there are a lot of commands, and sometimes you may remember a command but you may not know, Acha, this command was there but I don't know what exactly it does. So this is how you could get to know about it. Similarly, in your mac in your Mac, to know the information about a certain command, what do? You type man, okay. After that, you put the command, which is pwd. Enter. Now it is telling me about the pwd command, what it is, how does it work. Returns working directory name. Description, it is telling me all that information about it. Okay, cool. Everyone, anyone has any doubt? So two things. To know more information about a command, what I could do, Tanvi, again, just a second. So what did I do? I'll just clear this stuff. Okay, so whatever you have written, if you would like to clear it, you can type clear and clear. So it will clear the things for you. For any command in your Mac, for any command, if you would like to know more information about it, okay, so you will say man, okay, and the command name. So in my case, I'm saying pwd. Okay, so basically I want to know about this pwd command. Okay, and do an enter. Now it will give you the information about that command. So it is telling you name is pwd, it returns working directory name, it has the synopsis. You could use it like this. So pwd, and then there is hyphen l and hyphen p. Now hyphen l and hyphen p are options. Hyphen l and hyphen p are options, which we will discuss in some time. So right now I will not get into it. Okay, then it is also telling you about now what it does. The pwd utility writes the absolute. Now what it does, it is telling you, it writes the absolute path of the current working directory to the standard output. Now what is the standard output here? The standard output is actually your this screen. Okay. No, Harsh, in most cases, you don't need to remember a lot of commands, but yeah, there are a couple of commands which you kind of should know. And when you keep working with things, you basically will understand those. And one more thing, Tanvi, see, if you see this screen, now you have to come out of this screen, right? If you see in the here, can you follow my cursor? You see in the last here, there is a colon, and then it is asking you to write something, correct? Now, what do? I have to type Q. Q as in quit. Q I am typing here. The moment I'll type Q, I'll be out of it. Okay. The moment I type Q, I'll be out of it. Cool. Sir, please explain in DOS. So Rohit, exactly same thing we'll be doing in the DOS, but I mean exactly same in the sense get the information about the command, but instead of using man, we will be using, say for example, I'm talking about, say, who am I? Who am I slash question mark slash question mark. If I do and do an enter, I will get the information about that command. So it says specify, it is giving me who am I slash upn. I could use these examples. It is telling me how to use that command. Also it is telling me I can say who am I slash upn. Now upn and all that stuff you do not know, that is a bit advanced stuff. But who am I, who is the login id, what is the fqdn, what are the claims, what are the permissions which are there, and all that stuffs, all that information I can get it from here. Similarly, if I would like to know about cd, cd is the command, change directory. I would like to know more information about it. Slash question mark enter. This is all the information which I got. And now it says press any key to continue. And I'll say enter. And I came back to my command prompt here. Clear? Okay. Anyone has any doubt till here, whatever we have discussed so far? No doubt, no doubt, no doubt. Okay. So it is 9 o'clock. Let's take a break of 10 minutes. Okay. And let's be back at 9:10. And